Big zero. Just okay, sorry about that. Okay, first I want to thank all of you for this opportunity to discuss some of the free thinkers who have contributed to French-Canadian history. In an appeal to your unfailing tolerance, I would note at the outset that English is not my mother tongue, and I thank you in advance for indulging me my very strong French accent. So I ask for your indulgence, and also, but be assured that I am against torture, so I will try to do my best. So let's start by going back to the beginnings of New France. The Catholic Church was omnipresent, with its dogma and its rights imposed on everyone from birth until death, which also prevented the acquisition and spread of knowledge. Under the Church's influence, fear, constraint, and superstition reigned in New France. And it should be noted that this domination by the Church, which crushed all free thinking and controlled consciousness, lasted for more than 3 centuries. Samuel de Champlain himself, whose memory is still uncritically venerated, was, not without some brutality, one of the first champions of the submission of French colonists to the Church. A Protestant who had converted to Catholicism, Champlain sought to impress the people in order to better prove the force of his adherence to his new religion. In 1626, for example, he caused a pamphlet denouncing the Jesuits, who had arrived in New France the year before, to be publicly burned. Fortunately for him, the author of the pamphlet was absent. Otherwise, he would surely have suffered the punishment that Champlain had previously meted out to a certain Jean Duval, whom he had suspected of seditious conspiracy. Champlain had Duval's head placed on a pike, fixed, I quote Champlain's daily paper, fixed in the highest place of the fort of Quebec. According to his own journal, Champlain had thus wanted to teach a convincing lesson of submission to those who remain. In fact, in fact, it was mainly under Frontenac, governor of New France, starting in 1672, that the conflict between civil and religious powers appeared for the first time. Frontenac was opposed to the Church's absolute domination. And this is not well known, I can assure you. In particular, he wanted to prevent the clergy from interfering in the lives of families and individual personal lives of people. Frontenac ridiculed the Jesuits, who, he said, think as much about the conversion of beavers as of souls. However, he was recalled to France in 1682, which was a triumph for the obscurantist bishop of Quebec, François de Laval. But that triumph was temporary, because Frontenac returned 7 years later and triggered a new dispute with the Church by wanting to run a production of Molière's Tartuffe at the theater. However, Frontenac was unsuccessful in overcoming the clergy's obstinacy, and Tartu did not play in Quebec for the first time till 2 centuries later in 1893. Other anti-clerical figures emerged in the 18th century. Not the least was not the least of which was the Marquis de Montcalm, hero of the famous Battle of the Plains of Abraham. A reader of the Encyclopédie and the Freemason, we spoke about that this morning, Montcalm had in his letters often lamented the ridiculous nature of certain orders of the Bishop of Quebec, without, however, seeking to confront directly the clerical power, being aware of the extent to which it dominated people's minds. In 1764, the first issue of La Gazette de Québec was published. Among other feats of arms, the newspaper was the first in French Canada to publish a poem by Voltaire. Later, La Gazette published une chanson de franc-maçon, a Freemason song, inviting French Canadians to become Freemasons. It need hardly be pointed out that this kind of paper soon drew thunderbolts from the clergy, who viewed Freemasonry as a diabolical conspiracy. However, to consolidate as much support as possible in Canada, as the American Revolution was in its early stages, the King of England made significant concessions to the Catholic clergy in French Canada. It was during that time that appeared, the next picture is, that appeared a free thinker of prime importance, Fleury Mezclet, a French printer, arrived in Philadelphia in 1774 at the request of Benjamin Franklin, who had asked him to translate into French a first invitation from Congress to Canadians to join the Revolution. The translation was sent to Montreal, where it was widely distributed. That letter criticized the concessions granted to the clergy by the Quebec Act and offered Canadians, and I quote, a social pact founded on the liberal principle of equal liberty, while inviting them to assemble to elect deputies who would form a provincial congress, from which delegates would be selected to be sent to the General Congress that was to begin its sittings in Philadelphia in May 1775. The call from Congress was very favorably received by a number of rural French Canadians and also by Anglophones in the cities in what is now the province of Quebec, so essentially in Quebec and Montreal and Sherbrooke. So the Anglophones also dreamed mostly of becoming revolutionaries. The position of the English governor, Guy Carleton, became untenable. But fortunately for him, the clergy were firmly attached to England by the confirmation of the type, an institution that it could not hope to preserve in the egalitarian movement of a revolution. In 1776, Benjamin Franklin spent time in Montreal, seeking support for the revolution that was already underway. His friend, Fleury Mezclet, settled in Montreal shortly thereafter, and in June 1778, he published the first issue of La Gazette, which he directed together with Valentin Jotard, who was a lawyer. La Gazette littéraire was clearly Voltairean in spirit, and it became the organ of the first academy in Canada, the Academy of Montreal.